one of the most northerly countries in the world. A place where nature's extremes have clashed and leveled off. The chill of the Arctic and the heat from the Gulf of Mexico, together with the forces of the Ice Age, have created this land we call Norway. The name stands as a synonym for crisp air and dramatic landscapes. We think of natural wonders, vast open spaces, waterfalls, mountains. Still locked into the solitude of the Nordic winter, the land is waiting for ever longer days. Waiting for a new spring to come. Through endless variations, this land challenges. What do you know about the living? What do you know about the seasons? What do you know about Earth? This is where the Nordic winter meets the mild Atlantic currents. Where exposed cliffs plunge into the hidden vast depths of the fjords. And where clear fresh water is always in transition. In all its physical conditions, water is in plenty, covering the frozen ground, cascading like long, wide veils or sluicing downhill through stark rock, only to vaporize or to freeze again. Misty valleys gouged by ice. Awesome snowcaps up on the slopes. And sparkling creeks. Seasons and altitudes drive the water's convection, giving it the power of life and death. But Norway's winter is not all about the rigid ice. It's also about the endless greenery of the Nordic forests. Soaked by the vapor of waterfalls, of running rivers, snow, and sleet. Norway's landscape is defined by its peaks, valleys, and the highlands of the Scandinavian mountains. and the staggering valleys that indent them, the fjords. Fjords are the remnants of the last ice age, where a 2-kilometer thick ice sheet covered Scandinavia. Moved by the Great Meltdown and by gravity, ice worked its way through the land, cutting mile-deep gorges into the bedrock. At some places, the valleys were flooded by fast-running rivers, while those on the coast were inundated with seawater. Cragged, bare peaks look down from a height of several hundred or even 1,000 meters to undisturbed sheets of water. The bottom of the fjord often lies as deep below the surface, as high as its steep walls tower over the water. As though torn asunder by Thor's lightning itself, the vertical pulpit rock surveys all from its height of 600 meters over Lisa Fjord. The fjords adjoin an island-strewn coastline that enjoys the mild weather brought by the Gulf Stream. The result is a temperate, moist winter with much rain and snow. Norway's fresh water, its warm sea currents and changing altitude result in great geological variation and the presence of 60,000 different life forms. From evergreen conifers in the mountains and fjords to countless types of water algae. Through a range of coastal birds and fish to the birch forests and the ever-present fungi. Life is in abundance despite the sometimes harsh conditions. Further to the south, the waves of the North Sea laps against long, sandy beaches. This is a coast of dunes, fine rounded rocks, and hundreds of scattered islands that shield the mainland from the power of the open sea. The more exposed beaches brave high white mane waves that bring moist, salty air and vaporous clouds. Norway is one of the least densely populated countries in Europe. In the mountains and on the highlands, nature resides alone. This is why, for the wild animals, the snow-clad wilderness is a peaceful refuge. For reclusive predators like the lynx, the large ungulates like the European moose, and for more common species such as roe deer. A wolf in the winter dusk is not an unusual sight either. The chief predator roams great territories and needs true wilderness. The Eurasian lynx has to watch itself and its kittens in wolf country too, as wolves present a direct threat to them if they cross each other's paths. Norway's lynx belong to the largest subspecies of lynx and can grow up to 30 kilograms in weight and 130 centimeters in height. Females like this live in family groups with their yearling kittens. These opportunistic big cats eat rodents, smaller mammals, but most importantly, the innocent-looking roe deer. These small-hooved mammals can never feel safe in these forests. The wolves are not choosy either. They prey upon small mammals like hare and rabbit. And in pairs or packs, they attack roe deers and reindeers, which provide a copious winter meal. Both lynx and wolves find enough prey in Norway's mountains, and both populations are steadily growing. But none of them dare challenge the heavyweight moose bull. Seemingly a shy animal, the mature bull would not hesitate to use its solid palmate antlers as a deadly weapon. Despite its 700-kilogram body weight, the moose is agile and potentially dangerous even for the mighty wolves. Thus, wolf packs prefer the much smaller deer as their chief prey. Wolves were once common in Scandinavia, until poachers and farmers extensively hunted them in recent centuries. These packs are the descendants of wolves that migrated into Sweden and Norway through the Finnish-Russian border in the late 20th century. Despite strong conservational efforts, the wolf remains a red-listed endangered species in Norway throughout the whole of Scandinavia. This is certainly good news for the moose. Gone are the days of the vast, menacing wolf packs that would take on even the largest animal of Scandinavia's winter forests. Up in the mountains, snow and barren rock still dominate. This is where we find ice and frost year-round. In the valleys, glaciers are edging backward, supplying water for a number of lakes. These lower-lying lakes draw clusters of swans and gulls. Some of Norway's highest peaks exceed 2,000 meters. Among these peaks lies Europe's biggest ice cap to date, the Jostedal Glacier. Stretching its arms into numerous valleys, the glacier covers more than 450 square kilometers. At some points, its thickness measures 600 meters. Braving global warming, the mammoth ice field was the last glacier in Europe to start its retreat. The force it displays helps to understand how the fjords were born. The Jostedal erodes 400,000 tons of rock every year, sharpening the edge of the cliffs on its slow but determined march. On the shore of Sognogfjordana, we find the finest sandy beach in Norway. Flanked by two landmasses and protected by a beautiful bay, Revfiksanden is a 1.5-kilometer-long beach with beautiful white sand. The giant winter waves of the Atlantic Ocean pound the gently sloping shoreline at the foot of the mountains. And the wind that builds and erodes the sand dunes seems never to stop. Further south on the same island, from the foam of the tides, emerges a famous rock, Kannensteinen. From afar, we may mistake it for the tail of a whale washed ashore. But it is ancient rock, another sculpture from the elements, shaped by the waves and winds over thousands of years. The Atlantic Ocean plays a vital role in the evolution of life and culture in Norway. Without its coastal currents, the climate would be as freezing as in northernmost Siberia. The Norwegian current starts its journey in the Baltic Sea, and as it passes southern Norway, it mixes with a branch of the Gulf Stream. Then it makes its way northward and passes along the Norwegian shores. It carries vital oxygen and nutrition for fish, allowing for fishermen to harvest massive catches each year. Even more importantly, the current radiates warmth in the winter, easing away the chill of the Arctic. Hence, Norwegians never mind the stormy winds, for these bring a vital warm breath from the ocean. Most of the water from the fjords also adds fresh oxygen to this ocean current. Its glaciers and slanting rock walls make Norway the land of 1,000 waterfalls. Among them, Fossen attracts the most visitors every year. Its name derives from Old Norse, and it means revered falls, as if to foretell the fame the falls would later obtain. Fossen consists of several waterfalls, through which water descends a total of 182 meters. At the most photographed main section, the water of the Bjerre River roars as it plunges 145 meters. Though plummeting from a lower elevation, the 90-meter-high Fossen waterfall also ranks high among the most visited natural sites in Norway. The thunder of the falls can be heard from a kilometer away in the peaceful valley. Of the 1,200 fjords found in Norway, some stretch more than 100 kilometers deep into the mainland. However, few can match the wonders of this 15-kilometer-long branch of Storfjord, northeast of Bergen. Winding in a natural narrow gorge between steep mountains, the Geiranger Fjord amazes even the most traveled visitors. In 2005, Geiranger Fjord was listed by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site, as being one of the most scenic fjords in the world. The glaciers did a thorough job carving Geiranger Fjord. The bottom of the fjord is more than 500 meters deep under the water. The mountain peaks rise over 1,400 meters above the sea and retain their snowcaps even through the summer. Numerous waterfalls gush through the bare rock walls straight into the sea. In the peak months of tourism, more than 500,000 visitors come to experience the sublime beauty of Geiranger Fjord. But until April, all we see here is undisturbed nature. Fjords greatly influenced the history of Norway, both attracting the migrant peoples who came from the stormy seas, and later the limits of the land's productivity prompted settlers to explore the western islands over the sea. The fjords provided both safe harbor for the sailors and fresh water. They have seen fleets of Viking longships and trader ships. Some fjords were even the location for battles. People started farming in the fjords more than 4,000 years ago and settled at the foot of the White Peaks. From the waterfront, the fjords revealed their green pastures and forests, fertile soil, supplies of fish, water, and shelter. The vital ingredients that made settling a possible lifestyle for these ancient people. Building on the rich agricultural heritage, modern-day farmers continue to make the most of the fjord's soil and waters. Modern agriculture and forestry thrive on the slopes. Still, the Scandinavian winter draws a clear line for both beast and crop. Only 3% of the landmass qualifies as arable land, with 44% being highlands, mountains, and sea. Another crucial resource for Norway is its forest. Up to 38% of Norway's total landmass is covered by spruce, Scots pine, and birch. And the realm of trees is expanding. Today there is twice as much forest in Norway as there was 100 years ago. The exceptionally clean air of Scandinavia is due to the immense coverage of foliage. The landscape reminds us that the popular term of living green also means leaving ground for the green. On the scary, sheltered shoreline of Solbakk, we find a message from Norway's ancient past. A series of highlighted rock engravings, or so-called petroglyphs, litter this huge rock on the shore. What we see are unmistakably ships, more than 30 of them, with vertical sticks representing their crew. The concentric circles make 8 suns that beam down to the fleet. Who made these carvings, and what do they mean? Attempting an answer as it may be, these symbols were not carved by the Vikings. The carvings date back as far as 500 BC. They were made by people of a prehistoric age, more than 1,000 years before the Vikings fared the seas. There are several hundred similar rock carving sites throughout Norway, proving that people populated Scandinavia several thousand years ago. Rock carving was a cult-like act, and we can but guess as to the meaning of the symbols. Some say these are traces of a long-disappeared fertility cult, the ships being the helpers of the sun. Others suggest that the ships are pulling the suns, as if through a long Nordic night, or perhaps through the underworld itself. Northwest of Stavanger, Baraunen Beach protrudes from the mainland into the North Sea. Its name reflects its geographic hallmark. The Norwegian word raunen means boulders. Baraunen stands out as one of the biggest and best preserved boulder beaches in Europe. The rocks that litter its shore appear at first glance to be perfectly round, almost fine polished by the sea. Further inland, the beach is dominated by dunes, which provide habitat for many protected bird species. Although it's not far away from the city of Stavanger, the peninsula enjoys strong environmental protection that has helped preserve its unique landscape from human interference and disturbance. Outside in the west, the sea breaks upon a low sandy beach of 40 miles or more. It is the sea itself, the North Sea broad and free, unbroken and unbent, endless. Black, green and briny, it comes rolling in mighty waves from the northern ice and the English Channel, driving its white maned horses of breakers forth from the ocean fog till they froth with rage, while it roars its deep eternal organ note from the utmost abysses. Then it throws itself against the shore and is shattered into a white foam, with bumps and thumps and long thundering crashes, dying at last in a dull boom. The great Norwegian writer Arne Garborg, writing about the beach of Jæren in his 1892 novel Peace. Born and raised in Jæren, Garborg often reached back to this solemn landscape for inspiration. Stretching between Åre and Bora in Rogaland, this 11-kilometer beach indeed rivals the beauty of Rifik. It beckons with white dunes, fine silver sand, and the incessant rumble of the breaking waves. Cool and wet, Norway is an ideal place for some guest species from other parts of the world. The ever-curious sea lions. And penguins, too. The Bergen Aquarium offers a closer look at some of the most important fish species of the nearby sea, the Atlantic salmon. On the lake, birds and waterfowl congregate. Ducks share the water with seagulls and swans. Back in the wild, the Nordic winter still holds its power over Scandinavia. The mountains and lakesides seem to be slumbering, as if under a spell of frost. But the conditions are changing lately. Winters in Norway tend to be milder now, and rivers that used to freeze in the first months of the year now run free. The Cascades gain new strength as ice spares the flow further upstream. The mild winters mark a kind of transformation Scandinavia has seen before: global warming. By 2100, the mean temperatures are estimated to be 2.5 to 3.5 Celsius higher here. The last time temperatures crept to those levels, between 7000 BC and 3000 BC. All the glaciers disappeared from these mountains, and sea levels rose by several meters. Today, all the 30 glaciers of Norway are in retreat. But the scenario is more complex than a simple explanation. The warming of the seas affects the warm ocean currents along Norway's coast. Should the currents stop, not only the mountain tops, but also the valleys would look like this. Then Norway could look like southern Alaska, northern Siberia, or even like the Arctic. Less rain, deep winter freeze, an endless landscape of snow. Over the mountains hangs an unlikely peace, as if the whole winter was but one long moment of motionless. Only the wind sweeps and the sun wanders its flat trajectory of the short winter days. But under 1,000 meters of altitude, the snow carpet breaks on the ledges, and the ice turns mushy on the lakes. A slow Scandinavian spring is looming. Not only the varied climate, but also the sheer mass of natural habitats adds to the stunning biodiversity of Norway. Up to 15% of the country is national park, national reserve, or otherwise protected landscape. The highly wind-tolerant Norway spruce abounds on the slopes and valleys. This prolific conifer grows 2 to 3 feet per year in its first 25 years, and many of them live to be 100 years old. They thrive in the moist climate of Western Scandinavia. Higher up the mountain, the soil gets thinner and thinner, until it can only support puny bushes and shrubs. Beyond, it's all bare rock and snow. Full of mist, full of myth. Norway often seems distant and rigid at first sight, as if it was one with Niflheim, the home of mist, the first of the 9 worlds in Norse mythology. And the glaciers might be the ice waves that originate from the cold northern country of Niflheim. But as the fog disperses, we see a scenery unfold that could well inspire Asgard, the home of the gods, and Valhalla, paradise of the Viking warriors who fell in combat. Heaven connected to the sphere of humans, the green Middle Earth, with a rainbow bridge. Maybe a rainbow that was born of the vapor from the grand waterfalls. Not that one needs these mythic depictions to marvel at Norway's gaze-gripping locations. For these forests, mountains and waters respond to our innate love of the wilderness. It's enough to simply say, in Norway, we feel closer to nature.